the layout obviously was really, really bumpy, and I wanted to kind of show everybody, because we always talk about the racetracks, how they could be better, what we could do a little bit different. So I got at least the drone up over the weekend so we could kind of go through the track map a little bit. And Chris, as our guest host, I want you to kind of walk us through, because obviously you were working with Nash Motorsports. Your junior guy, Charlie Smith, he started on the outside, I think, just about damn near every session. And
Yeah.
turn number one was giving up like 5 spots for free.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that maybe some of these series can learn from, and ROK specifically, because they're doing these temporary circuits during these winter months, is maybe we need to work on having first turns not be so inside lane preferable. A few of the very experienced drivers, I think Ramos got away with a few jump starts, or not even jump starts, but questionable starts. But I mean, if you were on the outside there, I mean, you had to be a very, very experienced driver just not to lose a position. So I thought the track layout was fine. I obviously didn't get to race it, so Ryan's the best to see how it raced. And I think for the most part, the racing looked really good. But that they only had a certain amount of acreage to deal with, and they probably did the best they could with what they had. But the first turn was not great at all.
Ryan, what was your take overall on the layout and what they did?
The track was rough. That's not to say ROK didn't do a good job designing the racetrack. I thought the layout was fun. It was a bull ring. It was a 12 corner like bull ring. I mean, the lap in the K was 36 seconds. So I mean, that's like Ocala basically. So it was a really short track. But I mean, it was rough. It was really rough. And I was surprised that they held the event here before and then came back, because like we had like Caleb Gaffar hurt his ribs pretty bad. We had another driver that after the first day, his back was hurting so bad that he couldn't really continue. And he just was in pain basically. And after the second day, I was having back issues. And I wasn't sure if that was because I was in the KA and it was just a little slower and you feel the bumps a little more. But there was there was times you'd go through a corner and it would hurt really bad. Like turn one especially was a gnarly corner. That back hairpin that we're kind of looking at right now is also, it's really, really, really bumpy right there. And if you go offline or you come in a little too tight, you hit the bumps at a wrong angle and it'll mess you up. I mean, I'm sure in the shifter stuff, it was pretty painful. So, I mean, it's not to say they didn't do a good job with what they had. I'm just kind of surprised they went here before, and I'm assuming it was on the same part of the asphalt, so they probably had the same issue before. I get the tracks are limited in Florida, but that track is a tough one to race on, and it's hard on the body. And because it was so rough, it was hard to pass. I mean, there was you get a lot of guys going into the first corner to pass people, and then they get in the center of the corner and the carts just buck and slide wide, and then it's like it just made it really difficult to get like good solid racing in, just because of the way the bumps were on the racetrack.
I feel like it was really short. Like when I was there, I don't remember doing 35-second lap times like the shifters were. Like I feel like last time we were there, we were at least over 40. Like what was the difference of why it was so short compared to last time? And I mean, I doubt anyone knows, but
I wasn't at the last one, but they kept the layouts pretty similar. Like a lot of the stuff you can see on like the overhead here, the infield hairpin that they have kind of in the center, that's very similar to the way that they laid out like the tree turn back at the old Ocala Grand Prix. That was pretty similar. I think they might have like shortened up the runs in turns 1 and 2, or I mean, you can see they have a little bit of space to play with in the back hairpin section coming out of that left 180.
Yeah, it was definitely
right
longer.
That was a little more. The space itself on the lot wasn't different. The only thing that I wish it would have done a little bit different, and the shifter guys touched on it really well, because that was the only racing that seemed like passing was about impossible. Like problem they had is there was a lot of double apex or really long apex corners, and so in the back corner, kind of back towards the stadium, they did a double apex. It was like a long double apex, turns 3 and 4, enough that they at least labeled it. Actually, I don't think they labeled it as turns 3 and 4, but it was essentially like a 2-corner turn, 290s. And they had a little bit of space they could have played with to go a little closer to where they parked the trucks with that carry the barriers around. And if they would have opened that up and made it like an increasing radius corner, like turn 2 at Beaver Run or turn 1 at Daytona, where you could defend in, but it gets tighter and it becomes more of a 180. They could have raced a little bit better, but for them, it was you could defend into turn number 1 because turn 2 was a switchback. You could defend even into turn number 6 because turn 6 was a switchback, which the only way that we ended up really having a pass out in front and shifter ended up in a wreck because French had to like throw the whole cart down the inside on AJ. And AJ was chopping because he had the wrong gear on and was just trying to fight for dear life. But that was like the only place he could find a way around him. So I think the only thing that I would have done different with the track design, and it's something that they did different and did pretty well at Rock Vegas, at least better than where they had in the past. And that's to kind of eliminate as many of these double apex corners.
I don't know why Rock seems to like the double apexes so much because they're so frustrating to race against. At least in the VLR, and you could see it in the tag stuff, in the GP stuff. You would like intentionally, like turn 1, for example, which was one of the better passing zones. You did intentionally overdrive the corner so that it'd set the cart up wide enough so that you would apex the correct apex on the backside of the corner. But because you're intentionally overdriving it, like actively going past the braking zone, it was almost impossible to pass somebody into turn number 1 unless you got beside him on the straightaway. And that's why you saw a lot of guys like making contact down on the inside. You saw Ramos, I think it was in the pre-final or something. He was passing somebody or DeTulio in practice or something, and they collided in the center of the corner just because, one guy's intentionally overdriving the corner and the other guy's just trying to make a pass. And so that's something Rock just seems to every track we go to, they just always do double apexes. And it's like, it just kills the racing every single time. It makes it impossible to pass people. The shifter racing is terrible because of the double apex. And that's something, honestly, like I've been wanting to go to shifter as much as that's surprising to a lot of people. I have been wanting to go to shifter and I've been trying to talk to Raleigh into it. But the whole thing was like, I was always like, I don't really want to do it at the street racing stuff because you can't pass. It's not like entertaining racing. The driver who just gets the whole shot is the one that wins the race. And so it's always like, it's just not fun to race those events that have this style of racing. The track layout, like on paper, like when you look at the track map, it looks cool. It looks like a good layout, but like it's just so many double apexes and you cannot pass anywhere.
I think the other problem too is, with the Rock GP, because you're on the limiter with these shorter tracks a lot, Rock Cup USA guys don't really put that in, like the 100cc, because you can run different gear ratios. You have that opportunity to really kind of, play around with where you want to be fast on the track. Essentially with the GP racing these days, if you're not on a big track, I mean, you're on the limiter for halfway down the straightaway. And it's a similar problem to KF and OK in Europe, where you're not really passing down the straightaway. You're having to dive bomb people because you're on the limiter, which then creates more aggressive driving. And the track layout has a lot to do with how you can gear. I know if you're in the front, like Morgado and Ramos were, I know what gear they were on, and they were on lower gears than most of the field. But majority of the field's on the same gear, especially when you're in the high 80s and you have to run an 11-tooth driver in a GP. You don't have a 10-tooth to go to. So there's no splitting of the gears. You can't go to a 12-tooth because then you're in a 90-something. So everyone's on the same gear, and it ruins the racing.